Imagine conducting a census before verifying who actually is eligible to be counted. This is exactly what the several valley-based groups, they are there in the Manipur, they say about what should not happen. Now, in this, only it is about identifying the illegal immigrants, or could it reshape the politics, even the security and the demographics of the complete state? So let's decode this issue in this complete session along with me. Now, my name is Bhavar Singh Surohi, and I'm ex-NDA 115th course and qualified civil services in 2012 as well. And what I'm going to do right from today onwards is that the PDF of these sessions will be uploaded to my Telegram channel, which you can join, and ultimately you can gain or you can get the PDF as well. Now, this is quite important because we have to pertain, or this complete issue, it pertains that why Manipur is actually demanding the NRC, or the National Register of Citizens. Now, it was actually about the 14 Meitei dominated valley civil services organizations which actually argue that the Meitei Kuki conflict that is ongoing since May 2023, it can only be resolved by first separating the genuine citizens from the immigrants. Now, over here, this is quite important because there had been 70 years of the claimed unchecked cross-border settlement, mainly from the Myanmar. Although there had been the claims that the immigrants, they have also migrated from Bangladesh as well, and through the Mizoram also. It is the 1951 that these valley-dominated civil services, civil society organizations, they have actually asked the cutoff, and ultimately they say that those who were living in the state before the 1951, they should be termed as the original inhabitants. And there are the 10 of the groups which had been listed as indigenous in the demand. And this is where we have Meitei, we have Tangkhul, Kaboi, Langme, Impui and Zime, along with Rongmei, Mao, Maram and Pumai. Now, bottom line over here is that when it comes to the complete demand, so it seeks to gate the census 2027 on the prior citizenship verification with the NRC that should be published with the Gazette before the final population figures, they are basically released. So we'll be going in and we'll be doing a deep dive in of the complete issue in front of you in this complete session. But before that, let me tell you that we have the GS Foundation batch, that is the Resolution P2I batch, which is available in English. And you can join this by using the code BRS Live that will fetch you the maximum discount. Now, when it comes to the NRC, so what actually is the NRC, or the National Register of Citizens? Now, this is basically a register where we have the verified Indian citizens, and it was first compiled in 1951. All right, after the 1951 census that was conducted. Also, this was never rolled out nationwide. This is quite important to note over here. We have only completed case that is there in Assam, where it was conducted in 2013-19 under the guidance of, or the supervision of, the Supreme Court, which is based upon the Section 6A that was added to the Citizenship Act of 1955 after the Assam Accord. And over here, you can see that the cutoff that was taken was 24th March of 1971. Now, the final list was published for the Assam in August 2019, and there had been 19 lakh of the voters, or the 19 lakh of the citizens or the inhabitants of the Assam, they were excluded from the total 3.3 crore of the applicants. Now, the excluded family, they also include the children of the included parents, and this has triggered the years of appeal that we have seen, and even the appeals, they were filed in the Supreme Court as well. Even when it comes to the constitutional validity of Section 6A that was added after the Assam Accord, that was also being challenged before the Supreme Court that we can see right now. Now, this is quite important because when it comes to both the concerns, the NRC and the census, they are basically different. Because the census, it is conducted according to the provisions which are there in the Census Act of 1948, and the NRC is basically according to the Citizenship Act of 1955. Now, when it comes to census, it basically counts everyone which is present in India, regardless of the citizenship. And the purpose is the planning, the resource allocation, and also the delimitation base. That is, it is another issue that we'll talk about it in the later or in the another session. Now, this is quite important because when it comes to the census, it creates no legal consequences for the individual, and also it does not determine or verify the legal status of the people. But when it comes to the NRC, this is where it verifies the citizenship and excludes the non-citizens from a register. And the purpose is to basically identify the illegal migrants against a legal cutoff date. Now, the real consequences are that ultimately the illegal migrants, they actually lose the rights. There is also the tribunal reference or the referral that we have seen in the case of the Assam, and there is the risk of the statelessness as well. Legally and procedurally, this is quite distinct from the population enumeration that is done according to the census or in the census enumeration that we have seen. So thereby there is a distinct category when it comes to NRC and in the or the census as well. Now, when it comes to the problem of the migration that had happened in Manipur, you can see that it was pre-1962, where we had the cross-border kinship movement, where Chin and Sagyang communities of the Myanmar and Manipur's hill tribes, they had shared their ancestry across the colonial era borderline. Now, after 1962, there had been military rule in Myanmar, and ultimately that have pushed the gradual and the sustained cross-border movement into the Manipur's hill district. Then there had been in 2021 the coup in Myanmar, and then there were the ensuing civil war, which have again sharply accelerated the refugee flow of the Chin and the Kuki communities across the border. And when it comes to the clash, the ethnic clash that was there in 2023, until now you can see the Meitei and the Kuki violence that have hardened both the migration anxiety and the claims that is there over the indigenous rights or the status. Now, over here, this is a contested framing where ultimately when it comes to the Meitei, so they are calling the recent arrivals illegal migrants. But at the same time, when it comes to Kuki Zo groups, they actually say that many are basically ethnic kin split which had been done by the colonial border which was, formed. And again, this is or this had been present for the generation, or they had been present for the generation in the same region or in the same vicinity. So over here you can see that this is the map, and ultimately over here you can see that this is where we are talking about Manipur, and here we have Sagyang division that is in Myanmar. Then also there is Chin state. So there had been influx, and that had been through Mizoram as well, through or direct as well when it comes to the complete border with the Myanmar. And also there had been influx of the illegal migrants that had been from the Bangladesh as well. So this actually relates to the broader perspective also that you must have seen recently, where the governments, where we have the BJP ruled governments in the West Bengal, even in the Assam, they have asked for the pushback of the illegal migrants into their respective countries as well. So this is quite important because we share nearly 1,643 kilometers of the borders with Myanmar. Now, there had been a free movement regime between India and Myanmar. Now, why this actually existed in the first place is that it is in place since 1968, and actually it was formalized in 2018 under the Act East policy, and it recognized that there had been colonial borders split for the Naga, for the Mizo, for the Kuki Chin kin groups. And ultimately this had enabled the trade, schooling, and even the cultural exchanges across the line. But now when it comes to the scrapping, so the government have already announced the scrapping of the FMR or the free movement regime that had been announced in February 2024. And here actually Ministry of Home Affairs have cited the internal security and the demographic structure of the northeastern states, and even the border fencing had been announced across the various states of Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland and Arunachal. Now, when it comes to Mizoram and Nagaland, they actually oppose the scrapping of the free movement regime because they call the border a colonial artifact, severing the kin ties that were there between the communities. Now, this is quite important because ultimately when it comes to the complete population and the share of the percentage of the various ethnic communities which are there in the Manipur, you can note over here the Meitei population share is 53%, but the land that is occupied by the Meiteis, it is mostly in the valley region where it is just 10%. The Naga population share is 24%, and the Kuki or the Zomi population share is 16%. So basically there is the hill and the valley demographic anxiety that have existed, and this has occurred across the Assam, Tripura, Mizoram and Nagaland. And when it comes to Manipur, so there is a distinct land population scenario that we can see in the complete state. So over here, the Meitei, they dominate the valley, while the hill areas, they sit under the tribal customary tenure. And this is where we are talking about hill versus valley split that predates and outlives the NRC debates in the state. Now, this is quite important because we have to see it through the constitutional and the legal lens. First of all, there is no national framework when it comes to the Citizenship Act of 1955 that allows the citizenship determination. But when it comes to Manipur, specific 1951 cutoff, so there is actually no statutory basis that exists as compared to the equivalent section 6A of the Citizenship Act that was added for the Assam. When it comes to the section 6A, actually it sets out the precedent where when it comes to experience, we can also say that such exercises, they actually invites the due process challenges and even the exclusion of the legitimate citizens and the years of the litigation that we can see in the region. There is also the safeguard of Article 371C that had been provided for the Manipur hill areas, where we have the HAZs or the Hill Area Committee, which have the special protection over the hill area legislation. So if any kind of the NRC that had to be implemented in the Manipur, so there would be the hill districts that could trigger the consultation requirements as well. And there is the neutral machinery as well in doubt, because we have seen that Manipur was actually under the president rule when it comes to the part of 2025-26, and also the question remain over the impartial administration and even the active inter-community distrust that is basically just after the 2023 ethical dispute that have emerged. Now, there are certain political implications for the census 2027 as well, because this is actually whichever community's preferred population baseline is actually logged, it is in ahead of the census carries the long-term stakes that will be there for the resource allocation. It will be there for the quotas and delimitation as well. Now, there is BJP MLA. We have Rajkumar Imo Singh and the Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament Sana Jaobe Leshimba. They have tied the NRC explicitly to ensuring the representation is reserved for the bona fide citizens. And also over here, both the leaders, they have flagged that there had been abnormal village and the population growth, specifically when it comes to the Kuki dominated regions and the districts, and the opponents, they have read this as basically targeting the Kuki political weight, rather than a kind of neutral citizenship exercise. And the civil services organizations, they have basically demanded to withhold the complete census figures and until the NRC is done. So ultimately there is no precedent or the clear legal mechanism that exists that NRC has to be conducted before the census exercise. Now, this is quite important because it could have the impact on the future delimitation as well. Because when it comes to the baseline, so Manipur's delimitation or the last delimitation that was held, it actually uses the 1971 census data. So there had been over 50 years of the data that had been used for the delimitation, and the civil service society or the civil services, the organizations which are there. Civil society organizations. So civil society organizations, they allege that 2001 figures for the Chandel and the Senapati districts, they were actually inflated. And there is the precedent as well that there is the Manipur High Court which have ordered a recount for the 9 hill subdivisions which is still pending for the Manipur. Now, there are the competing fears as well. And the competing fear is that the Meitei, they actually fear that the hill districts, they will gain the seats disproportionate to their genuine population. At the same time, we have Kuki Zo group as well, which actually fear that the NRC adjusted count, it would justify reducing their representation before the delimitation even begin. And therefore, both the groups, they fear about this exercise. Now, there are basically both the sides of the coin that we have to see. That is basically the long pending demographic disputes and the stale that had been there, which was using the 1961 census data for the delimitation. It warrants that there should be fresh and the credible verification. There is also the legislative backing that exists, where the Manipur Assembly, it had passed the resolutions in 2022 and 23. There's also the genuine post-2021 migration pressure from the Myanmar civil war, which is a security concern which already Ministry of Home Affairs has acted on the FMR changes that we have seen or the free movement regime. Now, there is also the things that we have to consider. that there is actually no neutral machinery that exists right now in the state amid the active ethnic conflict that we are seeing. Initially, it was basically between Meitei and Kuki tribes, and now we are seeing the fresh disputes which have emerged in the state between the Kuki and the Naga tribes as well. So over here, we have seen that when it comes to the Assam, where the NRC was completed, so there was the 19 lakh of the contested exclusion, even when there is no such conditions that existed in the Assam. Also, there is a framing around detecting Chin Kuki migrants' risk, that actually risk branding an entire community as illegal and not the individual verification. And also the NRC and the Census, they serve the totally different purposes, where actually getting one on the another is quite a procedurally unprecedented scene that we have seen in the country, and thereby there are the two coins that we have to see. Now over here, this is quite important because in the region we have to balance the security, we have to balance the humanitarian crisis and even the constitutional values. So what could be the way forward that should happen in the case of the Manipur? The first one is that we have to decouple the census from the NRC. We have to let the 2027 census proceed on the schedule and treat any citizenship verification exercise as a separate and properly legislated process. Then the second step that we can take is about the neutral and the judicially supervised process, where any kind of the NRC type of the enumeration that should have the complete oversight by the Supreme Court, and even there should be clear appeals and the safeguards against any kind of statelessness in the region. Then the third thing that should be done is that we have to settle the borders question separately. There have to be complete FMR or the fencing decisions in consultation that should be taken with all the affected communities which are there, and not just the valley groups. And then next thing that we have to do is that we have to restore the political trust first. That is quite important. And we have the SOO agreements which are there. We should review them, and the Hill Valley dialogue, it should precede any kind of the demographic exercise that must be undertaken in the state. And then there should be judicially validated figures and not, the delimitation. It should be based upon the validated data, where ultimately the complete delimitation, any kind of the future delimitation, it should be based upon the updated, validated data by the judiciary that should be done. And it should not be on the communities or the one community's preferred cutoff year that must be taken into the exercise. So these are the things which can the solution, or you can say the way forward for the situation that we have seen in the Manipur region. So that would be all in this session. I hope that the matter is clear to every one of you. Let me tell you and remind you that we have the Resolution P2I batch, which is basically the GS Foundation batch that we have. Now over here, the admissions in the batch, they are closing on 21st of July. All right, 21st of July, and you can enter into the course by using the code that is BRS Live, that will fetch you the maximum discount. So that would be all in this session. Thank you very much guys for joining me over here. Do not forget to like the session, to share the session with your friends, and also subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss any of the updates. Thank you, bye-bye, take care, and Jai Hind.